nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.
Well, hello there, Nature Nuts. How are you? And welcome back to one of my favorite locations, the Sonoran Desert near Tucson, Arizona. I just love it here. It's a great place for Nature Nuts to go, especially in the wintertime. And I know we've been here before. We've featured the lizards of the Sonoran Desert and the scorpions of the Sonoran Desert, but there are lots and lots of interesting things here that we haven't looked at yet, like, well, tarantulas. We haven't looked at tarantulas. Lots of other different kinds of weird arachnids like whip scorpions and tailless whip scorpions and pseudo scorpions and sun scorpions, which are also called camel spiders and sun spiders and solifuges. There's different kinds of harvestmen and mite. There's a whole leggy empire down here that is really, really interesting. There's nothing wrong with being leggy. I mean, more legs the better. And I don't know, I can hardly wait. I'm all cranked up about this. It's November, but that's still okay. That's still a good season to look for these kinds of things. And I don't know, what else can I tell you? I'm just cranked. I'm ready. Watch out for the cactus. The more legs you got, the more trouble you can get into. That's the way I feel about it, and I think you'll agree. Anyway, stay tuned for the weird world of leggy Sonoran Desert critters of one sort or another. Don't forget centipedes and millipedes too. They're okay.
Okay, well, why don't you just come right around there and have a seat on these root beer cactus over here, and I'll tell you a story. You want to hear a story about one of these desert critters? Okay, well, I'll tell you the story of the first time I ever saw a vinegaroon. You know what a vinegaroon is? It's a real peculiar thing. They call them whip scorpions because they look a little like a scorpion. They got this whippy thing coming out the end of their tail, and it sprays acetic acid, which is kind of what's in vinegar. It's pretty interesting. Scientific folks tell me their real name is Euro pigeon. It means something that is the opposite of a pigeon that doesn't come from Europe. At least that's my view. That's my personal theory. Anyway, I'll tell you the story. First time I saw one of them vinegaroons, I was up over the mesa and the butte and the canyon and the wash over there by the old Witter's place. I was traveling with my dog Reuben, and Reuben's he's a tough little feller. He's a little terrier about the size of a hamster and meaner than stink. And me and Reuben was going along the road there, and we were taking the message up to the Witter because her son was working at NASA, and he had just taken a rocket ship and landed right on the sun itself. You know, it's the sun on the sun, which is kind of interesting. And a lot of people around here, they say, oh, the sun's nice, but not too many of them have actually been there to find out, which is something. So anyway, there we were, and I said, "Wait a minute, Reuben! Look out! There's a vinegaroon right on the ground, right in front of you." And he went yipping and yapping up to it, and it stuck its little whippy tail up in the air and sprayed vinegar all over the place. And what do you know if it didn't just pickle him? Pickled, like a little pickled hamster. And I said, oh, yee, this is terrible. So I carried him all the way to the deli. There's a deli down the wash and over another butte or mesa or some such thing. I don't know. It's hard to keep these desert landforms straight sometimes. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, sure enough, they named a sandwich after him, which was kind of nice. But then I had no company, so I went back up and grabbed that vinegaroon and I tamed him, brought him into captivity, and I called him Wayne, because that's always funny when you can call an animal Wayne. I mean, there he is. He's been with me ever since. He lives in a jar. And the folks in the deli always like to see him too. They even named a little square cookie with some figgy stuff in it after him, which is pretty darn nice of him. And I think that, you know, I come to quite like vinegaroons. Still don't know what the name means. I mean, vinegar is vinegar, but what the heck's a garoon? A garoon? I don't know. Honest, I don't know. That's the end of the story. I have no clue what garoon means. Garoon. Careful, you garoon my story. Sorry, Wayne. Oh, say bye-bye, Wayne. Bye-bye, Wayne.
Vinegaroons are not dangerous to people, but they are predators and they kill other bugs by crushing them in their pincers. Okay, well now let's take this segment of the program and talk about segments, or more properly, body parts. It's the easiest way to tell all of these various buggy critters apart, and I'm sure you all know that an insect has three main body parts. First, the head, where the mouth parts are, and the antennae. Got a little bit of a lightheaded feeling here right now, but no point in having a head if you don't have a thorax as well, and the thorax is where all the legs and the wings are, if you happen to have legs and wings. And the rest of the body is the abdomen, where the digestive system and all that sort of gut stuff resides. Pretend that my legs are not legs, pretend they're joined together to form an abdomen. All right, that's pretty simple. That's how insects are built. Spiders and scorpions and other arachnids are built on a different body plan, sort of a two-part body plan. The head and the thorax are fused together to form a thing that's either called a prosoma, which just means forebody, or cephalothorax, that means head and thorax. And that basic body part has the mouth parts and the legs, no wings in arachnids, and it's kind of a, you know, pretty obvious thing. Then the rest of the body forms the opisthossoma. Opisthossoma, a very difficult word. It means the rest of the body, or the abdomen, and it either has a little taily thing on it or it doesn't. Very interesting. Of course, in spiders, the actual segments are not very visible. They're all fused together. In scorpions and wind scorpions and things like that, they're much more obvious. But remember, the ancestor of all the arthropods, I wasn't trying to say it funny there, it was a wormy critter that had ring-like body segments, and you can still see that basic body plan in the millipedes and the centipedes, which have so many segments, it's amazing they can keep track of them at all. I've been called a cut-up before, but this is just plain ridiculous.
Centipedes are predators with a venomous bite, while millipedes are herbivores, some of which have toxic defense chemicals. Hello, well now let's discuss the number 5,937, which if you look at it upside down spells legs. Yes, quite. And while we're on the subject of legs, let's talk about centipedes and millipedes. Two very different sorts of organisms that are often confused in the public mind. A millipede, let's start with millipedes and point out that the name millipede means 1,000 legs. Now this really is a mathematical impossibility. They have many legs, but if you consider that each leg-bearing segment has two pairs of legs on it, directed downward, by the way, and if you had 1,000 legs, divide by 4 legs per segment, you would have to have, yes, 250 segments. I have never, ever seen or heard of or read of a millipede with 250 body segments, which is extraordinarily impossible. I've never seen a millipede with that many leg-bearing segments. A centipede, on the other hand, is an organism that has one pair of legs per leg-bearing body segment, and the name centipede means 100 legs, which is also a mathematical impossibility, because a centipede will always have an odd number of leg-bearing body segments. And so you could either have 49 segments
times 2 legs, which would give you a total of 98 legs, or you could have 51 segments. 2 legs each would give you 102. If you were to find a centipede that actually had 100 legs, it would be extremely unusual. Spiders are so much simpler. They always have 8 legs. And speaking of spiders, here's a lovely poem by my friend Chris Fisher about the largest spider in this part of the world, the Tucson blonde tarantula.
From far aloft, with a heart so soft, I thought of her somewhere. Like days before and weeks afore, she filled my mind with flair. But so far from me to the desert free, that she roams and lives her life, that distant space I must retrace to soothe my angst and strife. So I made my way on a holiday to find my Tucson blonde. Found her right there, beside her lair, basking by a pond. And in her eyes, all 8, I read the fate that our meeting that day brought. We knew both our love can't be, but struggled with the thought. Oh, her legs were long, and some were strong, and one hung by her side. Her eyes unfazed, yet held my gaze as I battled my thoughts inside. She was my one, the stars and sun that made my life complete. But deep down we knew that spider's true, in love her man she eats. So I broke our stare, fear fully aware no more our eyes would cross. Her hourglass shape would not escape from my heart in love now lost. From here and on to the great beyond, I'd be a love-scorned vagabond, 'cause there's no escape from true heartache when in love with a Tucson blonde.
The name Tucson blonde comes primarily from the pet trade, wherein many of these spiders are still being taken from the wild and sold in stores.
Well, hello there, Nature Nuts. What can I get for you? Listen, before you order, let me give you a little bit of advice. We take the human digestive process for granted. It's a wonderful thing. Gives us a choice between solids and liquids. The solids, we just chew them up, mix in a little saliva, send it down to the stomach and the intestines. They take care of all the rest of the digestive process. And it seems so terribly normal to us. You can have a Coke, you could have some fries, you could have a pop, you could have a milkshake, you could have a hamburger, and your body could deal with it. Well, now let's compare that to the world of weird arachnids. Some of them eat a lot like we do. Now, especially think about arachnids with pinchers, like scorpions and whip scorpions and tailless whip scorpions. They'll grab their food with the pinchers, sometimes cut it up or pull it apart a bit. Then they'll chew it up with their mouth parts, just the way we would, and then they swallow. But they don't swallow big chunks of solid food. They swallow the slurry. It's kind of like a milkshake. A really thick milkshake. And I'll bet you anything, it doesn't taste anything like chocolate. Now spiders, on the other hand, spiders are quite different. Spiders have the 2 hollow fangs. That's their only mouth parts. They don't have any pinchers, any other way of processing their food. So what they do is they bite into their prey, and instead of just starting to suck out the juices, oh no, they spit digestive enzymes into their prey. And then they wait, because spiders are very patient animals. And they wait, and the digestive enzymes kind of break down whatever's inside the prey. You know, the whole body turns kind of mushy, and then they sit back and slurp up that pre-digested slurry. We call it extraoral digestion, because the digestion happens before the stuff gets in your mouth. And I gotta admit to you, after discussing it, I have no appetite whatsoever for that milkshake. I don't think I'd make a very good drive-through guy, do you? Nobody'd order a thing. Anyway, at least you learned something. On your way. You want fries with that?
In the Sonoran Desert, new species of spiders and other arachnids are still being discovered and named by scientists.
Keep on walking, tarantula. Keep on walking like Dracula. Desert soil is parched and dry. Keep on walking, but don't tell 'em why. David walks behind you night and day. Edgar reads your poetry, you don't say. Alice sat beside you, awake in the dark. The spider walked alone, the dog refused to bark. Ow! Spinning silk and kicking hair, walking by that bureaucrat's chair. 85 footprints right on the line. Keep on walking instead of flying. Keep on walking past my back door. Keep on walking on the kitchen floor. Keep on walking past the parliament. Keep on walking through the governor's tent. 85 footprints right on the line. Keep on walking instead of flying.
Well, hello there, Nature Nuts. How are you? It's time for Desert Science Forum, where we surround ourselves with expert arthropod biologists here in the Sonoran Desert. And today we discuss the question, what is the coolest, the niftiest of all the desert arthropods?
My favorite desert arthropod is the whip scorpion, or the vinegaroon. They look like scorpions, but they're not. They have a long, slender tail, no stinger, but they use vinegar as a defense mechanism.
Well, that's a tough task to decide what the coolest is, because there's so many cool things around here, but I think I'd have to go with the giant millipedes. I just love their legs, which have this wave-like action as they walk along the desert floor.
I think I'd have to say that it's the amblypygid, or tailless whip scorpion. They can run on vertical surfaces, on the underside of surfaces. They move sideways and backwards, and they use their long antenniform legs to scare prey towards those large pinchers that they catch them with.
Yeah, this place is literally crawling with niftiness, and we've got a healthy diversity of opinion here in the scientific community. Now, I've got to remind you, a lot of people find these desert arthropods a little bit scary. Let's see which ones spook the experts.
My least favorite desert arthropod is the centipede. They have long snake-like bodies, 42 incredibly fast legs, and they don't bite you with their mouth, but their front pair of legs.
Well, I think the ones that really bother me the most are some of the scorpions, the bark scorpions in particular, because they hang out in places that I look when I'm collecting insects. They can just whip out of nowhere with that stinger at the end of their tail.
But once you really get to know them, they're not really scary at all.
Well, that's a beautiful thought to end on, Steve, but I gotta tell you, the ones that spook me are those solifuges, the ones they call the camel spiders. They're spooky, but you still gotta love them. The critters we love to hate, and we hate to love. No, just love to hate. Anyway, that's all the time we've got for Desert Science Forum. Catch you again next time.
Indeed, when you visit the desert, you have much more to fear from people, vehicles, lightning, and flash floods than you do from mere arthropods.
There's so many myths about arachnids and tarantulas especially. Myths like what would happen to you if you got bitten by a radioactive spider. Just pretend my backside is adhesive here. Nothing would happen to you if you got bitten by a radioactive spider because there are very few radioactive spiders. Don't worry about it. And tarantulas, well, lots of people are afraid of them. But, you know, despite the fact that they have big fangs and they would definitely hurt if they bite you, North American tarantulas are not dangerously venomous. There's some in Australia, whew, bad news. But North American ones, they're fine. As well, even though they've got those two little spinneret things out the back end of the opistosoma, tarantulas do not spin webs to catch their prey. They'll sometimes put down a little bit of webbing before they shed their skin, and they'll shed their skin on that nice little pad. But for the most part, don't worry. You see these horror movies with people trapped in their houses by webs, but it's not true. Cease, evildoer, or I will web you into oblivion. There. There they are. Okay, well, I got my slippers and it's time to sit back and relax and contemplate just how interesting it was to explore the world of weird desert arthropods. I mean, you gotta admit, they're wacky critters. The only regret that I have is that we only really just barely scratched the surface of this incredibly interesting subject. I feel like we should come back and do a whole show about Europigeons and a whole episode about amblypygids and all those different kinds of pigeons and ipids and all that kind of stuff. Fascinating. That's why we like biodiversity. There's so much excitement about biodiversity these days. It's because diversity is cool. Variety is the spice of life, even when it comes to weird desert arthropods. Why am I holding these slippers? I just wanted to remind you that even though you hear from people like me that you should always shake out your shoes in the morning when you're in scorpion country, you know, don't get paranoid about that. Don't let that stop you from coming down here and exploring these things yourself. Especially if you stay in a nice hotel, there's nothing to worry about. There's not going to be anything in there. Ha! Unless somebody put it in there. Look, it's Wayne. I get such a kick out of Wayne. These Europigeons are really, really wacky. Anyway, time to go. Say bye-bye, Wayne. Bye-bye, Wayne. He's almost cute in his own little funny way. Assuming he's a he. Almost cute. This close to cute. You know what they say, a miss is as good as a mile. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. I'm a nature nut, and I hope you are too. See you again soon. Bye now. It's just funny. It's a funny name, Wayne. My apologies to any of you named Wayne. For humans, it's normal. For Europigeons, funny.
Same time each and every week, uncensored and uncut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.